The wind carried a low, whistling hum as it swept through the open plains. The moon hung high above, pale and watchful, casting long silver lines across the dirt road that led to the old barn. Jake Turner tightened his jacket and took a deep breath. The scent of dry hay, leather, and cold air mixed together, the familiar smell of the ranch at night. He'd lived here his whole life, but tonight felt different. Uneasy. He'd spent the whole afternoon fixing broken fences, checking the horses, and oiling the hinges on the stable doors, anything to keep busy and not think about what Luke had said. "Come on, Jake. You've never done it. It's tradition." Luke had grinned, leaning against the fence earlier that day. "Everyone spent one night in the old barn. You can't call yourself a real ranch hand until you do." Jake had rolled his eyes. "That barn's falling apart. I'd rather not wake up buried under it." Luke had just laughed. "It hurts the first time, man, but that's part of the fun." The words echoed in Jake's head now as he stood before the dark silhouette of the barn. The wooden structure loomed like an ancient beast, creaking softly as if breathing. He swallowed hard, holding the lantern tighter. Its warm glow barely cut through the darkness inside. "This is ridiculous," he muttered to himself, stepping forward. The heavy wooden doors groaned as he pushed them open. Dust swirled in the light beam, and the smell of old straw and rusted metal filled his lungs. He took a cautious step inside. The floorboards protested under his boots. Somewhere in the rafters, an owl hooted, long and mournful. Jake's heart thudded faster. He'd heard all the stories growing up. How the barn was cursed, how strange sounds echoed from within, and how old Mr. Wallace, the previous ranch owner, had vanished one stormy night. Of course, Jake didn't believe in ghosts. Not really. But alone, in that echoing dark, belief didn't matter. Every shadow seemed to move. Every creak sounded like a whisper. He moved toward the stalls, lifting the lantern higher. Cobwebs shimmered like threads of silver. "It hurts. It's my first time tonight," he joked softly under his breath, trying to steady his nerves. His voice cracked. Something thudded in the far corner. He froze. Probably a rat, he told himself, though his voice was a whisper now. Then came a scraping sound, slow, deliberate, like boots dragging across the floor. His stomach clenched. The lantern flickered. "Luke," he called out. No answer. The shadows seemed to breathe, stretching closer. A gust of wind slammed the barn door shut behind him, echoing like thunder. Jake jumped, his pulse racing. He spun around, the light trembling in his grip. "Okay, that's enough," he shouted, forcing his voice to sound brave. "If anyone's messing with me, I swear." A sharp bang cut him off. Metal clattering against wood, close enough to make him flinch. The horses outside neighed restlessly. The silence after was worse. Jake took a shaky step backward, every nerve screaming. The lantern dimmed again. Something brushed against his arm. Soft, cold. He gasped, spinning around. And there was nothing. Just darkness and the sound of his own heartbeat pounding in his ears. Jake froze, the lantern trembling in his hand, his eyes darting wildly around the dark barn. His breath came in quick bursts. Every shadow seemed alive, every sound sharper than before. He could feel his pulse hammering in his neck as a slow creaking echoed from above. Something, or someone, was in the loft. He squinted up toward the rafters, his lantern light barely reaching the haystack above. "Who's there?" he barked, trying to sound brave, though his voice cracked halfway through. No answer. Just a faint rustle. The next second, a heavy shape dropped from the loft, thud, landing just behind him. Jake jumped nearly out of his skin, spinning so fast the lantern nearly flew from his grip. He stumbled backward, heart hammering, eyes wide. And then came the laughter. Not just one laugh, a whole chorus of it. The barn suddenly blazed with light as flashlights flicked on from every direction. Figures stepped out from behind bales of hay, from shadows, from the loft. Jake blinked, stunned, as familiar faces emerged. Luke, Ben, Travis, even old Hank, the foreman, who could barely stop wheezing from laughing so hard. "Gotcha," Luke gasped between fits of laughter. "Oh, you should have seen your face, Jake. I swear you turned whiter than a ghost." Jake stood frozen for a moment, the realization sinking in. His fear turned first to confusion, then to anger, and finally to disbelief. He looked around at his so-called friends, their flashlights reflecting off the barn's dusty walls, recording every second of his terror. You idiots," he burst out, half shouting, half laughing. "I nearly had a heart attack." Travis doubled over, tears streaming down his face. "Man, you screamed like a banshee when that door slammed." Luke grinned, still catching his breath. "We rigged it with fishing wire. Hank tugged it from outside. The sound, just an old bucket and a metal rod." He pointed proudly to a contraption near the stalls. "Took us an hour to set it up." Jake rubbed his face with both hands, shaking his head but unable to hide the grin spreading across his lips. "You planned all this just to scare me." "Tradition," Luke said, patting his shoulder. "Everyone goes through it. First night in the haunted barn. It hurts the first time, man, but you did great." The others erupted into laughter again. Jake sighed, chuckling despite himself. The tension drained from his body, replaced with that familiar warmth of friendship, the kind built through long days, hard work, and a bit of mischief. They all gathered around the haystack, passing a thermos of coffee that Hank had brought along. The barn no longer felt haunted, just alive with laughter and shared memories. "Guess I'm officially part of the ranch crew now," Jake said, raising his cup with a smirk. Luke nodded. "You earned it. Next time, you get to help scare the new guy." Outside, the moonlight poured over the quiet fields, and the night seemed softer somehow. The echoes of laughter drifted across the ranch, mixing with the sounds of distant crickets and the rustle of the wind through the grass. Jake leaned back against a wooden beam, grinning to himself. He realized something then. Fear fades, but the stories born from it stay forever. And tonight, he had just earned his first one. The next morning began like any other, or so Elias thought. The desert sky was a pale gold, the air still cool from the night. He was out feeding his mule when the ground began to tremble. At first, he thought it was thunder, but the sound grew louder, like rolling drums. He looked up, and his heart skipped. Over the distant ridge, a line of horsemen emerged, Apache warriors, their feathers and spears glinting in the morning light. Elias froze, unsure whether to run or stay. He had heard stories of raiders passing through the valley, but never had they come this close. The riders approached fast, kicking up dust until the air was thick and the earth shook beneath their hooves. At their head rode a tall, broad-shouldered man on a black horse, his face painted with white and red markings, his expression carved from stone. His gaze locked on Elias, who stood silently beside his mule, trying not to show fear. The man dismounted with the grace of a hawk landing, and the other riders followed suit, forming a respectful circle around the farmer's humble home. Elias swallowed hard. "I mean no trouble," he began cautiously. The tall man raised a hand to silence him. His voice, when he spoke, was deep and commanding. You are Elias Turner. Yes, Elias replied, his throat dry. The man nodded once. Then you are the one who saved my son. Elias blinked, realization dawning. Your son, the young man by the river. The chief's eyes softened slightly. He lives because of you. Our tribe does not forget a life debt. He turned and gestured behind him. From among the riders, 20 young women stepped forward. They were dressed in ceremonial buckskin dresses, adorned with beads, feathers, and silver ornaments that shimmered under the sunlight. Each carried a small basket, some with flowers, others with woven cloth or carved tokens. Their faces were calm, dignified, and proud. The chief's voice carried across the quiet air. Among my people, a man who saves another's life is considered a brother, a friend, or more. You gave my son back to me. For that, I give you the honor of choice. Choose one of these women to be your wife. They are daughters of my people, pure of heart and strong of spirit. You will never live in hunger or loneliness again. Elias stood speechless. 20 brides. It felt like a dream spun out of madness and miracle. His heart raced as he looked from one face to another, unsure what to say. Chief, he stammered, I need no reward. I did what any man should have done. The chief stepped closer, placing a firm hand on his shoulder. Some men pass by. You did not. A good deed deserves good fate. Then one woman stepped forward, slightly apart from the rest. She was not the most richly dressed, but there was calm strength in her eyes, a quiet depth that drew Elias in. She held his gaze without fear. In that moment, Elias understood. He bowed his head. Then I choose her. The chief smiled for the first time. Then you have chosen wisely. Today, the son of the desert gains not just a wife, but a tribe. And as the wind carried the sound of drums across the valley, Elias Turner, once the poorest man in the canyon, realized that sometimes, the smallest act of kindness could open the door to a destiny beyond dreams.